Work stuff.
Okay, welcome to the Ordinance Subcommittee meeting of August 13th, 5:15. We are missing Councilor Coniff, but we are here. Anybody for public speak on anything that's not on our agenda? Annette?
Are there ordinances for, maybe I talked to you about it, about how high your weeds can be in your yard?
There currently are no ordinances for that.
Cars that are not registered,
Yes.
how many?
You can have one unregistered car. Here's where it gets tricky.
Yeah. If you can have a million in your backyard, but not.
But you can't, as long as they're not, as long as you can't see them.
Yeah, okay. How about trash all over the place?
So we don't have a blight ordinance.
okay.
That's something that people have asked about in the past. Because, for example, I had someone who called me, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, who was upset with their neighbor who was not mowing their lawn and was kind of letting the lawn go. And we did look into it. We never did anything with it because the enforcement of it was really challenging because it's kind of subjective. One person's weed garden is another person's beautiful,
How about when it
perfect
starts
lawn.
covering up the fire hydrant?
Well,
Yeah, go.
so I can answer that because I actually had a couple constituents contact me about this, and I think that if it is causing some sort of public safety hazard or utilities accessibility issue, you can call both police and DPW, because I did this for a resident recently where he lived next to someone whose plants are very tall and he was concerned about it, and so I talked to our chief of police, and they came out and looked at it, and I think then they called, I don't know why they called, but basically it was a line of sight issue. And so it was a safety thing, and then they asked obviously the first thing you should always do is just talk to your neighbors.
I talked to this person.
Yeah, I understand.
And every year, it's another excuse.
So if it's causing some sort of municipal issue or safety issue, you can certainly call.
I mean, I did go to the Board of Health last year.
Board of Health also, yeah.
Yeah, because they had cans of paint sitting out and all kinds of hazardous stuff sitting out on the street. That got taken care of, but that's it. And that's unfortunate. The person this year supposedly has a good excuse. She was in a car accident, but every year it's the same thing, so,
Right.
Yeah, well, this resident, the DPW I think came out and did cut it for them, and there was someone else, I don't remember where they were, but they were at the corner of some street that has historically bad vision as it is, and they came out again, they helped them cut it, so there is a resource, but yeah.
I mean, as far as ordinance goes, it's a little, I
didn't think so.
Like the big one is, line of sight for driving, if you can't pull out.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a big one.
Okay, that is, actually, that's on another street.
Yeah.
By my house, that it's just overgrown into the street, so that people.
We actually
come in.
had someone have to move a fence.
Well, that was on, Stovepath Lane.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We hated that.
Yeah.
Because I lived
That
right
was
down
years
the
ago,
street,
though.
yeah. It
And
was
then-
like, whew, you
Yeah.
can't see anything. But, okay, so I would call the DPW for the line of sight?
You could probably call the police first.
Okay.
Not 911, but.
No, I can't see. Okay.
And they would probably either talk to the person or direct DPW.
Yeah, because I don't know that person.
Yeah.
But it's like there's bushes and trees that are hanging.
Because they'll be the ones to establish whether it's a public safety.
Is there a legal definition for line of sight?
I think the chief, again, it's subjective, but I think that the chief has a metric that he would use to determine at a certain point, can you see a certain distance? But as far as like city ordinances go, there is not. But I think that as far as public safety goes, I'm sure that they have some sort of metric that they use.
And also, I would caution you now with the establishment of legal cannabis, if you call the police and tell them you have a weed emergency, you need to clarify exactly what they're talking about.
Tree emergency. All right, so I didn't
Okay.
think there was.
Weed
but-
or grass?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, so if there's nothing else that is not on our agenda, yeah.
Just speaking of ordinances, did I hear you say at the last meeting that the city of East Hampton does not have a noise ordinance?
We do not have a noise ordinance.
Is there a reason why we don't?
Because, it's come up twice Two different police chiefs said, absolutely do not pass this, or I will be very upset with you. Because of the enforcement is so, it's become such an issue around enforcement and the legality of the enforcement, and then the lawsuits that they get opened up to as they enforce the noise ordinance has been a nightmare in other communities so far.
It's a nightmare having neighbors using the backwoods as a shooting gallery.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, Owen, feel free.
That
Oh,
is-
Jump in.
So, well, but what there is though, even though we have a local ordinance, is there is I think either unruly or disorderly conduct as in the state laws.
Okay.
And so the police can enforce those. And so again, I mean, you could always call the police.
Right.
Yeah.
But certainly, even though there's not a definitive, like, no noise after a certain time,
Right.
it doesn't mean that someone could be disruptive at all times of night. And so they can choose to enforce disorderly conduct if it fits specific criteria.
And there's a whole nother set of criteria around like firing firearms in city limits. So there's like certain setbacks where people can't, fire firearms within a certain distance of, I think it's 500 feet from a house or any dwelling. And so, I think that if that was something that was a recurring issue, that you would be able to call them and they would help you manage that.
The tricky part is we're on the Southampton border.
Oh.
So the firing is taking place in Southampton.
Oh.
And we live in Easton.
Right.
And they all live in Easton.
Yeah.
I mean, you can call the Southampton. Have you called the
I
Southampton police?
haven't. I'm trying to be neighborly and talk
Yeah.
to them and ask them to respect
Right.
the peace and quiet of the neighborhood. So I'm trying to work through it that way. But
Yeah.
I was curious when I heard you say we have a noise.
Yeah, so even if we did have a noise ordinance, if it was taking place in Southampton, it wouldn't have any jurisdiction.
Even though all the noise is
It's coming in.
It's impacting,
Yeah.
so I would deal with it.
Yeah. So, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think we have some bike stuff going on. Let's
Yeah.
start with that.
Yeah, so, we had talked about, let me pull. So we had talked about and moved forward some language last time, and then I received some really thoughtful input from a resident, Barbara LeBombard. I don't know if you've met her before, but she's also on the Manhattan Rail Trail Committee, as well as some discussion with the Rail Trail Committee about some of the language we were using. One issue specifically was around looking to adopt some Mass Bike Coalition classification of electric bicycles, and how that we don't really know what the status of that is right now, and so I thought that while there was reasoning behind it in terms of trying to limit certain speeds and certain kinds of operation of electric bikes, I personally thought that we could take that out. And so I just basically removed that.
Okay.
As a recommendation. I guess we'll vote on it at some point. And I think that I made it a little difficult on myself there was some kind of convoluted language in section 3-17-3 restrictions that, basically described, a vehicle that could be human powered, but could be motored, like, motorized scooters is the big thing that we're talking about here. And then lo and behold, chapter 90 basically has a definition for that exact thing, a motorized scooter, which is basically says exactly what I was trying to say. And so I figured we just introduce that into our definitions, and then we put that down in that spot as a restricted item.
Okay.
Another thing that I think both the Rail Trail Committee, is that why you're all here too?
Yeah.
Okay. So some other feedback I received also. The other thing I'll say too is that I thought that if we were defining an electric bike with that conventional definition, that it was redundant, even though the Federal Code of Regulations includes that, to just take that out and just have a separate definition. Because, and then I think there was some concern about having taken out specifically, even as an example, the snowmobiles and ATVs. So I put that back in. That's
any motor vehicles, motorized vehicles, motorcycle, snowmobile, ATV.
Yes, yeah.
And did we, one of the things that, and I'm sure that you probably forgot that I mentioned this, was horses.
Well,
Did
you know what, Councilor Derby, I never forget anything you say. And
I
so-
wish I could say the same.
And
I
so-
forget
so
stuff I say all the time.
If you'll look, so the restrictions E, and you could probably help me craft this, and I thought of something else I didn't put here, but
Okay.
I wrote horses, livestock, or other draft animals.
Okay.
Um,
And I think we might want to say for that one, because we don't know, like, say there's a winter festival or we have some sort of special event, we might want to have like a horse-drawn carriage be allowed. So
Right,
we
or
might
as
want to say
permitted.
with, you know, like permission.
Special
Yeah.
permit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I did.
Do you want me to do like an E1, this may
Yeah.
be,
This may be suspended with, you know.
with permission,
Yeah.
similar to the open container stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I couldn't believe that we had omitted when the last time we were going over this horses.
Horses.
You
Mhm.
need bigger bags.
This may be suspended, but what would you want, what are you thinking, ordinance or city council?
I would say, well, I don't want to make it too onerous. I guess just the approval of city council.
And that's kind of in line with what we
Yeah.
have for other
Yeah.
types of things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that.
Yeah, I mean, if it's like a winter festival and they want to do a, you know, horse-drawn sleigh down between, you know, I think
Yeah,
that-
yeah, I think that, and then the other thing I wanted to say is that, so curiously, and I think I talked about this last time, current MGL defines a motorized bicycle not, is more of a moped, so a 50cc or less
Yeah.
motor. And so I think it's important to make sure, and the definition of motor vehicle specifically states that motorized bicycles are excluded.
Okay.
But we don't want people driving mopeds down the bike path.
No.
And so it might be important to say something like a bicycle, like a bicycle powered by a gasoline motor. or
Yeah,
something like
gasoline.
that.
Because I mean, an electric motor is quiet and, you know, like you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. You can tell the difference when someone has one of those gas motors that they've hooked up to their bike.
Right.
Those things are loud and smell bad.
So I'll
and
just write
obnoxious.
gas powered bicycles.
Yeah.
So let me just look what else.
Can I ask a question about the definition of a traditional bicycle?
Yes.
Like, aren't there also tricycles that are operated in the same way?
Yes, so the goal with the bicycle definition here, because this is actually an earlier section in our bike laws, the goal here was to try to reestablish, this is more for the whole city, because when you start looking at streets, and the laws about bicycles or riding two abreast and some of the amendments we made in terms of being able to take the full lane, my goal was to try to make it so that we're really talking about a traditional two-wheel tandem bicycle there. Now, something I was trying to figure out, and you brought this up, is that can you ride a tricycle in the middle of the street like you can a bike? I really don't know.
I think you can.
Nobody's ever, I've never seen anything that says you can't.
Yeah.
Does the state define a bicycle, does the state definition of a bicycle include a three-wheeled vehicle?
It doesn't, it's two-wheel. So,
So we don't want to stick with this. The reason I'm saying this is because we did talk a little bit at our meeting about, you know, if someone's on our bike path and they're going to Northampton, we all want to have the same rules.
Yeah.
Continuity.
right. So,
Otherwise,
yeah.
every time they cross a border, you know.
Oh, God, what
Well,
do I do now?
so to be clear, on the
Who knows?
bike,
Gotta stop and turn around.
on the bike path, unless you run into some other restrictions that we've been discussing, any human-powered, non-motorized vehicle can ride on the bike path. So a
Tricycles,
Right.
quadricycle,
a non, well,
recumbent.
a quadricycle that fits into the lane.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
within.
Yeah, a Surrey car,
Yeah.
a penny farthing. Yeah, so that was, so this specific bicycle definition was really more for the whole city, and the intention for the rail trail is, and obviously you weigh in, but the intention for the rail trail is to make sure that it's human-powered vehicles. But the bicycle definition isn't necessarily for the rail trail per se, it was just for the city stuff. Does that make
So
sense?
How will because it seems like there will be sort of different rules if you're operating it on a roadway versus operating it on the rail trail. Because you don't want it to sort of, people to say, well, you can't go on the rail trail because you don't meet the definition of a bicycle as stipulated here.
Oh, but you could operate, but again, any human powered,
Is that in the ordinance?
Mm-hmm.
It's somewhere. Well, I mean, it's just right in the scope, designed for non-motorized use to accommodate a variety of uses, including walkers, joggers, bicyclists, skaters, pets, and people with disabilities. So,
I'm just conscious of the recent dispute, and if there's sort of like a chink in the definition that you say, well, wait a minute, you know, you allow this, but you won't allow that.
right.
Whether we need to sort of be as concrete as possible.
I mean, non-motorized is non-motorized, right? With the exceptions
With the
that
exception
we,
of that we made with
Electric
e-bikes.
assist.
electric assist bicycles, service vehicles, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's and that goes back to the reason why we had such a broad definition in the beginning, was so we weren't like narrowing too narrow what could go on the bike path. But you know, I think this having a bicycle definition, I think is good. I don't know if we need to have like some other definition that is more encompassing.
Like human powered vehicles.
Like human powered
something
vehicles,
like
they
that.
could be, I mean, on like a unicycle to
Right.
That's true.
to like one of those recumbent, like sealed little bike car things.
But again, they're
Yeah.
non-motorized.
Right, non-motorized.
So, I mean, that
Right.
that the scope covers it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I
Right.
mean, the scope does cover it. I think. I don't know if not having it in the definitions is problematic.
Right, like if you want to say, or instead of non-motorized, well, so non-motorized is
Because like this says it's it's designed for non-motorized use. It doesn't
Mhm.
and it doesn't necessarily say.
what about it's designed for is permitted for operation of.
This one.
How about
This is the old one.
That's the,
what about the end of that line too? You say something like the operation of non-motorized human-powered vehicles is explicitly permitted,
Mm-hmm.
with the exception of restrictions
The width
described
restriction.
here, well, or any other restrictions
Yeah.
outlined herein.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay. Is that? Do you think?
Are we reading off of this one?
So we've
Or
got
you don't
two-
have-
We've got two documents.
I gave you two. Okay,
Yeah.
so I gave you two. So the one with all the light writing,
Yeah.
that is the revisions of the other one. I just
So
want
this
to
is,
see.
we should set this.
I guess you could. Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
erased all the light white.
Well, the light one, if there's either some stuff in there that's crossed out,
Yeah.
or there's some stuff that's added in.
Now, are scooters in this?
Electric scooters or
a normal like a
or-
Razor scooter would be allowed,
Right.
if it's not if it's not electric.
And how about the electric assist?
So
So what, like with a throttle?
I have not ridden them. I just
Yeah.
came back from a wedding in Baltimore and there
Yeah.
are people.
No, that's what I'm saying, is
sailing all over the
I
place.
explicitly
Those
put it in.
Like
throttles.
30 miles an hour.
Yeah, no, I explicitly put that in.
Okay.
Yeah.
so those types of scooters are not allowed.
Really dangerous.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
So someone could like Lime couldn't come and dump a bunch of scooters
Right.
and people use them on the bike path because they wouldn't be allowed.
Right.
But I think one thing to recognize is enforcement. The devil's in the enforcement.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
You can buy those scooters on Amazon. So
Yep.
someone in East Hampton could buy it and be using it and not disturb anything. Technically, they're breaking the
Right.
rules, but
Right.
But I think what we're looking to do is really limit the commercial
Right.
use of those scooters
Right.
with this.
So use of non-motorized human-powered
vehicles.
Is explicitly permitted.
However, subject to the regulations herein.
Have you checked with Northampton to see if you could just copy there?
I looked at theirs, so that's where I got, through some independent research as well as looking at Northampton's, that's where I definitely felt that the electric bicycle definition was clear. And what's weird is some towns do, but Northampton, I couldn't find, actually, well, I mean, if you have a second, I could pull up Northampton's. It was hard to find my way through their.
Well, and I also know that they had some trouble recently with people with disabilities using electric assist bikes, and someone telling them that they weren't allowed to, and then they fought it.
Really?
And then they found out they were actually allowed to use them. Yeah.
Yeah, because they had explicit language in there. They talked about U.S. Code 2085 in theirs too. I think I looked at Northampton's a lot. I don't think there was much. I don't know where it is, but there wasn't much. There wasn't much else. In fact, I think actually what we're developing is going to probably be a lot more definitive. Yeah. So the use of non-motorized human-powered vehicles is explicitly permitted, except as any restrictions described herein.
Yep.
I think that was all I had. Oh, and obviously a lot of gas-powered
Right.
bikes. So, I think it dropped off somehow. Enforcement.
Oh.
So it was 125.
Yeah.
Do you want to stay at 125?
I think 125 is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Change that. I put that just at the end, and then basically any violation of this ordinance may result in a fine up to 1.
It used to be 25.
Ah. Okay. All right.
It was 25 until I don't even remember it. Maybe 5 years ago or so, we switched it to 125. And Barbara asked to do, because we wanted to up it so the police would enforce it. And she asked if we could do something that incorporated 25 so they could just put a sticker. I was like, sure, 125, there it is. Put a 1 on there.
So anything else? I was racking my brain.
I don't think so. I think as long as we make sure that we put an exemption, an ability to have an exemption if someone wanted to have some sort of a animal-driven sleigh or something.
Yep.
I think that that's good.
We have the thing about commercial use and
Commercial use.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there is a permitting process for,
They would just have to come to the city council, and we would just have to suspend the rule.
Oh wait, are you talking about the horses now?
Yeah, for the
Oh.
horse, if someone wanted to.
or if a pedal tavern wanted, I mean, would that?
Well, we left a clause in there that basically said that we could create permitting.
Oh.
Right.
But there's also in here is a width restriction, so something that is as large as that vehicle would not be allowed on the rail trail if this is passed. And someone really made a great point to me. I mean, my concern obviously around that was just generally access, just when one vehicle. But if we, there's no reason that if we started to have a large vehicles like that on the path, that there couldn't be two at some point coming in opposite directions, and they wouldn't be able to get around each other. And that was what I don't know why I didn't think about that before. I was more concerned about just one. So, but certainly, I'm totally open to things like, pedicabs and stuff like that that don't, that
Yeah,
fit in the
they're just
lane, and I think
one
that'll be
As
a
long as
really
they're
great
4.5
use.
feet.
Yeah.
That's right.
Do you want to define the signage allowed so that it's tasteful in terms of,
Oh, you mean in terms of business stuff right
Right.
now? Well,
So somebody's running a pedicab and they have this big sign on the side of their vehicle where there's no signs allowed on the bike
Right.
path at the moment. But
Right.
if it's on a vehicle, it's allowed, there's a little bit of a,
well,
I think if there was going to be a pedicab that
right now they can't be.
they can't, we'd have to
go
create an
before the city
ordinance that would
council.
allow it.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of them. I probably found 15 of them when we were looking. And part of the restrictions of the permit would be the signage
Signage,
allowed.
okay.
Yep.
And obviously the, people were complaining about the noise, the music and
Mhm.
other noise there was.
Mhm.
so-
Yes.
But those things would be addressed
Yeah.
case by case, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, but that was, I don't know how to, I mean, that's where, I think right now at least we have a stopgap.
Right.
I think Counselor Derby brought up a great point last time, exactly what is commercial use. So,
Right.
that's the complicated, he had this great point, because of course in my mind I'm thinking, it's more like in the nature of like pedal taxis and things like that, but he had said, well, what if someone wanted to lead a guided like jogging tour on the bike path? Is that the same kind of commercial
Or like
application?
walking down the bike path and then doing yoga somewhere. I mean, actually, I used to run, bike trips, and I see it as a great opportunity once the trail is done from New Haven to Northampton
Mhm.
to do multi-day bike trips, staying at Airbnbs or bed and breakfasts, and that's a commercial
Right.
Mhm.
venture. So would we, when they get into East Hampton, say, sorry, your group can't
Yeah.
come through here.
You can go the
You know?
road.
Right.
So,
Well, maybe it's specifically as it applies to like, a taxi cab
Yeah.
type of thing where you're having to, you're being charged to
Pay to play.
pay to ride.
Yeah.
Maybe that's more what we'd have to talk about at
Yeah.
some point. But yeah,
For now,
what
yeah.
are your thoughts?
I was wondering actually, just to think about I don't remember what they're called, the guys who pedal and they're taking trash and recycling.
Mm, pedal people.
Pedal people.
Are they not permitted on the?
No, they are.
Right, and I thought
But that's
about
a
that.
commercial,
It is.
so do they just have a special?
Well, we didn't.
I've never seen them on the East.
I've seen them on the road.
They probably, well, I know they're in East Hampton
They are in
now.
East Hampton.
Yeah.
So the question though, so too, there's the crooked sticks.
Oh.
Yeah.
But
And she's,
I think
yeah.
the difference there, in my argument, the difference there is that they're just using it as a medium for transportation, not actually for conducting their business. So.
But they're getting money for doing what they're doing. How is that different from?
Because they're getting money from where they go to, not necessarily on the path. I mean, they're not getting money to ride on the path. They're getting, the pedal people are going to pick up your trash, and so I guess because they're not making money on the path, they're
So you're
making
thinking
money
more
at your
about
house.
Where you have passengers, where you have paying passengers essentially is what you want to limit.
Yeah, where you're
Yeah.
like basically your access to the bike path is you're being charged basically access to the bike path.
Right.
But I think what we're thinking, I think the more narrowing it down to like a taxi cab type of thing is probably what we were thinking.
Yeah,
right?
well, and we also, we struck the commercial use piece, so it basically just says the city council may develop a permitting process for the use of the Manhattan Rail Trail for commerce. So right now, if pedal people use it, that might not necessarily be commerce that is related to the trail. So commerce that's related to the trail would be taking passengers on the trail for the purpose of taking them on the trail. It's something that's kind of
But what if you're
auxiliary.
going from, let's say you're going to Northampton, so you just happen to be using it, as the easiest way to get there,
Mhm.
but it's not necessarily just specifically to limit yourself to sort of the city boundaries. It doesn't feel explicit enough to me, I guess, what you're describing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Crooked Stick, they only use, she works there.
Well,
She
she's
only-
not. Yeah,
She only
yeah,
uses it to get
she's just
places.
riding down. She's
Yeah.
just using. I mean, she's just riding down.
She's not stopping someplace on the trail selling things.
Right.
She's just using it as a transportation vehicle.
Correct,
Same
yeah.
thing with the pedal people. They're just using it as a, to stay out of the road so they don't get killed by the cars that are in the road. So they're just using, I think, as a transportation,
Well, and both of those examples could easily go on the road and not be
Yeah.
on the bike.
Yeah.
Like they can still do their thing.
Yeah.
But I think of the type of commerce that we want to regulate on the path would be commerce that is solely
On the
conducted
trail.
on the rail trail.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you, and that's why I'm just. I mean, do we
Yeah.
try to craft that language now, in regards to making it clear what we're looking to, or?
mean, I could just imagine, you could go 3 feet across the Northampton town line, and then it doesn't apply to you because you're not solely in East Hampton. I mean, I don't know what that would be that you would, you know, I mean, there may be people who want to limit themselves to the city boundaries, but there may be people who, you know, use it principally, but also they go to Northampton or Southampton.
Oh, absolutely. And once they leave East Hampton, I mean, then they're.
Right, but I mean, you're saying you would place restrictions if they happen not to be leaving the town limits, but if they leave the town limits and they're doing the same exact thing, it's different.
Oh,
I think for like a, you know,
For commerce.
for like a
Yeah.
pedicab or some other type of, I can't even fathom what type of business would be using the bike path exclusively. I mean, I guess the pedal tavern.
yeah, or some sort of other pedal taxi.
Yeah, like a
Yeah.
pedicab, pedal tavern. Those are the types of things that I think that we would be looking to regulate, because we would want to have, you know, for example, like the pedal tavern, we want to have safety restrictions. We want to make sure that they have the proper insurance. We want to make sure that they are, you know, are meeting inspection deadlines. You know that. So those are the types of things we would want to have our finger on the pulse. Like someone just kind of using the trail to move through East Hampton and not necessarily stay exclusively here, I think we're probably less.
So you're thinking anything where you have a paying passenger, essentially?
Pretty much.
So it
Just like,
doesn't matter whether they're only, you know, whether they're just passing through or you being used exclusively
Correct.
in the
Yeah.
city.
Yes.
But if you have, you know, paying passengers and this is your business, then they will be subject to other ordinances. to make
other,
sure that
that,
they comply
you know,
with.
yet to be determined.
Yeah, like if someone set up like some business that takes passengers on the bike path from Amherst to East Hampton, I mean, I guess that technically, you know, and I would guess that the other towns would be.
They'd probably be on top of it. I mean,
Yeah.
so here's the thing. I mean, the closest thing that we have to that is a taxi. And so a taxi company that is established in East Hampton, they have to follow our ordinance that's based. So we have set rates, we have set inspections, we have a process that they have to go through in order to get their East Hampton taxi license. But they can bring customers to Northampton. But I think in order to like pick up passengers there, they have to have a taxi license there as well. Like in order to,
What is the definition of taxi, and would it include
Tax-
something that's,
the definition of taxi is very specific to motorized vehicles. So what we have right now.
so could that be broadened to include, you know?
It could. It would be a separate. It would be a separate ordinance.
Yeah.
Just because it's a different. The nature is different, and you know we, just not formally in committee, but I've looked at a bunch of petty cab ordinances, and I'm sure
I'm looking at one right now.
Yeah. And they have, you know, very specific things that the communities want you to do before you pick up customers on, and drive them throughout the community.
Yeah, Boston has a lot of licensing.
Yeah. So I mean,
So could it be covered sort of elsewhere and not need to be included in this?
Correct. I mean, you could just. do
yeah, I mean, well, it could have its own,
permitting process.
a completely own ordinance. And I think this, I mean, this statement is more of just that, it's a statement, because, you know, obviously the city council can create an ordinance whenever, which would, you know, so this just saying that we could develop a permitting process is just
Heads up.
heads up, right? It's not actually, there's no,
So you reserve the right to.
yeah, and which we have anyway, we don't have to say it, but, I mean, I guess it's not terrible to say that way. It's clear,
So if I want to sell lemonade off the back of my bike, I have to go get a permit.
Yeah.
right.
Right. I mean, that's occurred to me, like, and I'm curious actually what your thought is, like, you know, why aren't there people like setting up like hot dog stands on the side of the bike path for people, like.
Somebody wanted to
Somebody
do
came
that.
to our meeting.
Yeah,
Was
that's right.
it Pete Persifoli?
I don't remember who.
Night shift?
Night shift?
She wanted to
Oh.
do it
No.
down by,
Mill Pond.
right on Perry Street there. right in that little, I don't know.
Grass
what it is.
area?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Overlooking
Oh, well, that's not even the bike path though, isn't
No.
it? We're like in the parking lot.
Well, she came to us first because she didn't
Sure.
know who to do.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
And
isn't
we
that?
said,
That's city. That's
Go
Char's Grill. That's
somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that
Sure.
probably anyone could do. You just have to get a permit from the
Yeah.
city.
you just have to go to Parks and Rec.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think she ever did.
Yeah, I don't know if they did.
I don't know
or
if
not.
I've ever seen him there. Now,
don't know.
we would do what I do it now anyways.
Well, I mean, it's weekends. The food trucks are all down
Yeah.
there, so.
Yeah. And I've gone both ways about that. I think the biggest thing would be the people would have to like be very definitive about their hours and into the site that they plan to use and stuff like that.
Off
So, you know,
the trail.
yeah.
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 Um,
Trash issues and.
But then you get also into, there's very few spaces where you may be on private property or you may, so,
Mhm.
yeah. It's an interesting thing to talk about. I don't know how I have mixed feelings,
Yeah. Well.
but we're getting,
Yep.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So.
Do you have any,
Just the, I think you had enforcement here was a fine of 150. We should
well, you know, I
change that to
I
125.
know you had said, I just changed it.
They'll have to get another sticker.
Yeah, I like to bump things up a little bit. I put it back a little bit.
Okay.
So, do you have any?
No,
so,
I mean,
so the only
I think
thing,
that's good.
Okay, and then so the only thing I really included, so I added gas-powered bicycles. I put the horses thing in, and then I
Mhm.
added that this may be suspended by vote. Approval.
Okay.
I just did that right now.
Okay.
I added basically that like explicit, like in the scope statement. I mean, we can
I
even
think-
call, like, it says scope, it could call it permissions or something like that, or?
I think scope is
Yeah,
fine.
it's scope.
But draft animals
Mhm.
are DRAFT.
I couldn't remember. I had
Unless
beer
you're
on
gonna
my
get a
mind.
bear.
I know. I was like,
A
which
cold,
one is
frosty
it?
draft.
I was like, which one is it? I couldn't remember.
A cold frosty draft
Yeah.
horse.
Well, look, the Budweiser Clydesdale.
I was
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I couldn't remember, and it was midnight.
Yeah, that's
so
fine.
that's when I
I
usually
just
do
wanted
any of my
to-
city work.
It's just spell check wouldn't get that.
Yeah.
Exactly, and I was too tired to even like think about like looking that up. But thank you.
Horses with open containers.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, we can't have that
Oh,
either.
Yeah.
That's a violation of the open container law. We can't have that.
Oh, then maybe that's a loophole.
Yeah.
Where was that?
On a related issue, I mean, has the gentleman who is behind the Pedal Tavern, has he withdrawn his,
No, well,
whatever it is, application, or what,
didn't-
where does that stand?
he never.
He walked out on the last meeting.
Yeah, he never put anything forward because he
No.
couldn't. So we actually brought it forward so we could discuss it.
Okay.
And so now, right now we have two kind of pieces within our committee that are related to that. One is a commercial quadricycle ordinance, which we kind of worked on to have as kind of a backup,
Okay.
which would, so if he was not going to be in the bike path, if he wanted to, still operate, we wanted to have some guidelines around that, like where and when and those types of things. So there's that, and then this piece, which is the piece that adds a width restriction, basically, which would not
Prohibit,
allow it.
yeah.
Just allow.
And then there's the backup to the backup, which is an outright restriction of quadricycles if
Right.
the city council basically decides to move forward with, a no.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, if they say no to this, and they say no to this.
Right, or yes to that,
Well, so yes to this would
well,
ban anything over 4.5.
on the bike path.
Yeah.
And then the question is
Oh,
for
right,
the
for the
streets.
streets.
And then they, yeah, but. there's-
And when will it go to the city council?
Well, so.
This will be September.
Correct, so if we agree on this tonight, so yeah, so if we agree on this tonight, then we can send it to the city attorney.
Mhm.
Okay. And do you expect, what kind of reception do you expect?
From this,
Yeah,
Oh,
at
I-
city council, I mean, do you need us to?
I would say the only person that was even had like a thought of giving this thing a chance was me. So
Oh, you
And I-
mean just the width restriction or just
Yeah.
everything in
City
general?
council.
the
Oh.
width restriction
Yeah.
that would ban.
But I would love for any of you to just talk about like, why we need to be thoughtful about the use of the rail trail and stuff like that too. I mean, unfortunately for the owner of the Pedal Tavern, I think that it's a really great business idea, but the rail trail, I think, became a real sensitive topic in terms of, I think the width issue became a big thing for a lot of people, and I get that, and the noise, but it's hard to regulate noise, but I
Yeah.
think the width.
Because I could go down with I could throw my big battery-powered speaker in my bag and ride up and down the bike path all day long,
Right.
and nobody could say anything to
Yeah.
me, blaring whatever type of strange music I would want to blare. And really, like, so anybody can
Yeah.
make noise on the bike path.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
just
you can't, yeah.
that's the,
It's just the width of the thing.
yeah, it's the
yeah.
width.
But yeah, I mean, it is a nice idea, but not on the rail
And I
trail.
think it's a great idea for MGM.
Yeah.
Down Hasbrookfield.
Hey,
Yeah.
well, maybe I was down there for Jazz Fest. It was pretty cool.
And sir, I know we've talked before, but I forget your name.
Mine,
Yeah.
David Jaffe.
So, any other comments about any of that? But I think it would be great if you even had like
I'll
a
be
couple
there.
people from the rail trail just to talk about, because I think that it's fair to say that the goal of this is not really, the goal of this is not really to exclude a certain vehicle. It was that it created some kind of realizations of loopholes or kind of gaps in our ordinance when this whole topic came up.
Mm-hmm.
Is that?
Yeah. I mean, he could take off, one side of the seats and meet the requirement.
Yeah.
Might just go in a circle.
But as a commercial venture, he would have to get a special
He's
permit.
Well, right.
Yeah,
yes,
you have to get a
yeah.
permit.
So if you felt that that still was
Yeah.
a problem.
Sorry. Yeah.
Were there any length restrictions, or is it just?
Yep, there is a length, 15 feet. So you can't make a train.
And I think I've looked at some of the pedal, we've talked about the pedal people, and I think that they're not, I mean, they're like 12 feet.
Yeah,
think,
I don't
over
think
to-
they exceed 15. Yeah.
I've never seen them on the rail trail. Not that
I haven't
I've
seen them on the
them.
rail trail either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I've always seen them on Route 10.
Yeah.
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 Well, you do see people with like little baby bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah.
That's what.
Trailers.
Sometimes
Yeah.
I've seen somebody taking their dog.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's
That's
still
what we specifically wanted to make sure that we didn't exclude people that had tag-along bikes or trailers or other thing, or a tag-along bike and a trailer, which would still not exceed 15 feet. So we
Okay.
were purposeful with that part. So yeah, I think this seems fine to me.
You're good with that?
Yeah.
You're happy
Well,
with that?
thank you for taking the time to make this your attention.
Yep.
Well, absolutely, and I think that, certainly, there's always gonna be little things like this that will come up, and I think that we're always open to, things that you may notice to help us, create legislation around those things.
Right.
One of the things I'm wondering about, looking much further down the road, and just sort of thinking about, in particular, climate change, and as we try to move away from, carbon emissions and encouraging people to sort of, bicycle more, is that as traffic increases on the rail trail and other bike paths, whether where you've got that increased traffic, if there might be any issues we should be trying to anticipate now that would apply to sort of a busier bike path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's-
I'll leave that up to your committee.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is, when it comes time to repave,
Yeah, I was gonna say, the wear and tear of the.
looking at possible width enhancements, because if there is going to be increased traffic, then an increase that would warrant increased width, which I think a lot of the path would support. Like in most areas, there's probably a room for a foot on each side, and that might be something to consider as we move into the age of more people commuting by bike.
I'd love to see a section with those either solar or kinetic tiles. I don't know,
Mhm.
they're probably super expensive, but
We're working on looking for more lighting down, from Williston.
Yeah.
So that,
We're having
Yeah.
conversations with Williston about
great.
lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely do that because
Yeah.
that goes to my house.
yeah.
So and now it's beautiful. I get to ride down the path that's lit, and then I cross. I have to take out my phone and ride one-handed with my phone if I don't bring my light. So, you know,
I
get
know.
those lights
It's
up.
like-
I'm happy for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All
Thank you
right,
very
so,
much.
Let's.
yeah, it's our pleasure, and thank you
Yeah,
for all the
thanks for coming.
collaboration around this issue.
Yeah.
So I'd like to make a motion then to accept the language proposed
Okay,
that we discussed
second.
today.
All those in favor?
Aye. So,
Okay.
okay to type this up?
Type it up,
I'll
and
let you
we'll
just
send it
take the
to-
last look, and we'll send it to the
Send it to
attorney?
Barbara and the
then the-
attorney. Yeah.
Our lawyer, our attorney,
Yes.
yes, whatever he has to look at it.
Yeah, correct, yeah,
Yeah.
and then, so probably the second meeting in September, I guess?
Yeah.
I think that's what we, and so, just so you know, I don't necessarily agree with this, but it was a long meeting, but it actually got removed without prejudice from the public hearing, because.
Oh, this one?
This
This what we're looking
yeah,
at? Okay.
because I think they thought, I explained to them that it wasn't that much to change, but.
Right. They wanted it.
We just can put
That's-
it, the agreement was that we would just discuss it, vote on it, put it back in, so.
It's no
yeah,
problem.
Yeah. I'm putting up the.
So I'll set the public hearing again on September 4th.
Yeah, because we have a bunch of stuff that day anyway, so might as well be the second, so.
Yeah.
Great.
I'll stay for the rest of your meeting.
Okay.
So where did equity
So,
end up?
so basically, no one had any
I
issues
mean, you
with
guys
it.
can
No one
start
voiced any
checking, but it-
concerns. Not on the council at least.
Okay. Did people come and talk
There were
about
two
the-
members from the public that were completely in favor of it. There was one member of the public that was concerned about the expansion.
Adding.
Correct. But they talked about, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
And one of the things they talked about that actually kind of upset me was that their suggestion was, well, we should have more of a model of transfer, keeping the numbers the same, but a model for transferability. So, but my concern there is I don't think that's equity. Telling people who are marginalized to wait in line while people give up their licenses.
Right.
And the hope is that these businesses will succeed, and so you'll never see
Right.
that. So,
So that's
so,
not-
but that was, I don't think that was basically their opinion, but I just wanted to tell you that.
So we're just waiting on
we
the
sent that to
attorney
the
opinion?
solicitor, yep.
Okay.
So I don't, and that hearing's set for.
So this should be the 4th, and same with wage theft.
So wage theft, that was actually really moving. Were you there for the whole meeting
Yeah.
on that? That was actually really
Yeah.
moving. We had a lot of people from the carpenters and from other workers' organizations who spoke, and then local workers. And I mean, unilaterally, it was, very, very well seen, I think, by them on their side. There were a bunch of women who spoke about how important they feel the diversity requirements are, and so and again, the only issue is that the solicitor hadn't reviewed it now.
Right.
The one thing I think we talked about was there's some language in there around the diversity stuff, and we just probably have to introduce a
Amendment.
to say at least instead of shall be.
Yeah.
But I don't think there was.
And there was people of color to minority.
Correct. Councilor Gomez brought that up, and I mean, like, I don't know if you saw the email, but they were basically like, in different places, some people use people of color, and other places, my goal is to offend as few people as possible. So-
Well, and also make sure that it's reaching the people that it needs to reach.
Right. Yeah. Now, in the cannabis equity ordinance, we use the word minority, and maybe from a standpoint of, just standardized city language, maybe
Yeah.
we use the word minority,
Sure.
and then but we include the same definition. And I think that Councilor Gomez would. I
Sure.
can't speak.
Well, I had put forward, I think it was last year, but the people of the global majority.
Yeah.
Right?
I've heard that one. Yes, I've heard that before,
Yeah.
and I feel it's obviously philosophically and from a justice standpoint, a moral standpoint, I do agree with that too.
Yeah.
I think it just becomes.
Yeah.
We're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta make sure that people understand what we're trying to say.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's and how about did you see the email that was I think it was Jay sent his,
Yes.
did you?
That was red.
Okay.
So actually, oh yeah, so that was red, and so this, so just,
Yeah.
so that there was a gentleman who was concerned about if our wage theft ordinance would potentially make us receive fewer bids because of the provisions. The bids that we received would be higher. I wasn't quite sure why he was upset about the fact that we're trying to give opportunities to East Hampton residents for jobs.
No.
But so basically the representatives from some of the labor organizations there basically addressed that it's not an issue. And then what was really cool is there was a city councilor from Northampton, Councilor Carney,
Okay.
who's also an electrician, I believe.
Yeah.
And she got up and said, they've had their ordinance for a while and they have seen no decrease in bids, nor have they seen any changes in bids. And basically, what Lisa Clausen and one of her colleagues from the Carpenters said is, if you're seeing an increase in bid prices, it's because the bids you were receiving previously were not granting prevailing wages, were representative of inappropriate wage practices,
Right.
and now people are having to actually pay, insure, and employ workers properly. But the bottom line is it doesn't happen.
Right.
So
And I like, what was it, I think it was Councilor Riss said that the two projects in town are not going to be, that's not going to be part of it. So even though the school is about to bid, it's not going to be, it's not going to go higher.
Right.
Because
Right.
we're not,
Right.
those aren't, and he spoke right into the camera
Sure.
because
Yes.
there are, I'm sure people are going, oh
Oh,
God,
yeah.
or the cost is going up, and it's
yeah,
like.
but it wouldn't anyways.
It wouldn't,
yeah.
But we
Yeah.
do have, we will, we'll see potentially, we will see, Maple Center and Pepin potentially, being converted over if those don't go out.
And
to-
so, yeah.
And there's gonna be other city projects
Yeah.
that are either funded through some sort of tax exclusion or just, municipal projects. So, I think it's just a good thing to do. So.
Cool.
But so that's where we were with that. And so that's up to the solicitor as well. And I got a bunch of information from Worcester, Lynn, and somewhere else from their solicitors to forward to, which I forwarded to Solicitor Tanner.
Okay. And that sounds good. So I think we'll be good for September. Now, looking at the rest of our agenda, do we want to prioritize some of this stuff? I know that I talked to Jeff about getting me some of that info that he promised me about parking. So
Oh, yeah.
that's still on the radar. I mean, there's no huge rush on that, but I know that that's something that I just saw recently. Someone was like parking right up against somebody's driveway.
Mm-hmm.
That we could address that there.
Yeah, I think
Can't wait
so.
till they everyone was parking
Yeah, I
next
know.
to the pond because there's no line.
Yeah,
Well,
we
yeah.
talked about that, and I do think like the simplest thing with the lawns is to just probably have some sort of like setback.
Yeah, just like a
Yeah.
setback, and but you could, and I think the way to do it is to do it similar to a structure where you have like a 6 or 8 foot setback where if you're going to park on your front lawn, that it has to be at least 6 or 8 feet from your neighbor's property
Mhm.
line, unless you get your neighbor's permission and go to the planning board
Oh.
and say, I have permission to do this, so just like a permit,
So we'd have to do it. That'd be we'd have to meet with
planning board.
planning board.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think the yards piece is easy. The streets
Yeah.
thing is a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, well, and that's part of a bigger process of the parking inventory that's happening. So that kind of straddling ordinance and public safety, and we're kind of waiting.
Well, do you want to try to firm up some language for the yards and just
Yeah.
and then?
I want to see what Jeff, because Jeff said he had it all ready to go,
Oh, okay.
and because he said that he had already done it in Amherst.
Oh,
I just haven't seen it yet.
okay.
So, and the Board of Public Works that's still on our.
I swear we voted.
I thought
on
we
that.
voted that out.
I really thought we did too. I'm almost 100%. Now I'd have to look back through my notes, but I am pretty sure that
Well-
we voted on that because
Yeah.
it was just basically expanding the
Expanding
scope.
what- yeah.
And I am like, well, do you want to just vote now?
Let's just vote it now.
Okay.
All right, so let's vote to recommend to the full city council nuclear weapons. What?
Oh, that's a resolution.
Okay. Chapter 2, Division 6, Board of Public Works, adding section 2.66, powers and duties
Do you-
to the full council.
Yeah, you want me to make a motion to that effect? Or did you just make a motion?
I just made a motion.
Oh, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, so
Okay.
I'll do that. I'll get that on for public hearing.
Let me write that down.
I saw that on there, I was like, I could
I
have sworn
I thought we
moved
voted on
already.
that. I really thought we did. So, Public Works. 2920. I'd like to, I still have to go through the Parks and Rec stuff just to merge that.
Yep,
with
that's
the-
fine.
I just, yeah, I mean,
No,
it's
it's no
not,
big
there's no
rush.
rush,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that.
I actually
is,
don't think that, I don't see how, by the way, with smoking, how that would impact public smoking.
Right,
So I'll finish up
Okay.
that language, I mean, yeah.
and,
Because everything I've seen from the CCC drafts is obviously private spaces. I guess if you get a one-day event, it would probably have to be similar to here for alcohol, that it could
Right.
be, but I already put that in the language,
Mhm.
so.
yeah,
We're talking about open container around cannabis consumption. So,
right. And did Bob ever get back to us about what, because remember, he's like, oh, there's nothing that we can do now. I was like, no, it's $100 fine. Did we ever get
Oh.
clarification on that?
Oh, I have to look. I actually
Yeah.
found that language when I was looking at something else.
Okay.
And
Because I'm pretty positive that they can, if
Well, there's
someone was smoking a
state-
joint right there,
yeah.
they could say, you can't do that, here's a $100 fine.
Yeah, but and I think that's again, it goes
It's
back
a
to the state
state-
versus, so all that
right.
money goes, so.
Right, or
Yeah.
50% of it, or
Something like that.
some
yeah,
percentage of it.
Yeah. But we
Yeah,
gotta-
so if we should clarify that too, because I'd
Yeah.
like to know that for sure.
Okay, let me just.
And whether we could,
yeah.
like, whether they would double dip, like if someone was smoking a joint right there, and then the police officer was like, don't do that, and they're like, whatever, right? They're being a jerk about it, so they're gonna get busted. Are they gonna get hit with the state fine and a local fine?
No, you can't. Once you adopt, my understanding, much like open container enforcement for alcohol,
It's one or the
it's
other?
one or the other. If
Okay.
you adopt the local
I just-
ordinance, it's only, yeah.
Okay.
That's
What
the.
about cannabis edibles?
But you can't really do anything
Yeah.
about that.
It's tough. I mean, I put some language in there, kind of about not securing them. I have to look at the language I used, but
Trying to tell the difference between a brownie that my wife cooked last night and a brownie that has
Or the
something
little
in
gummy
Like
bears.
there's no, unless you bring it to a lab, there's no way you're
Yeah.
gonna know.
yeah,
Or
unless
you
it
eat
was
it.
clearly
Yeah.
marked. But
Yeah,
even
unless
then,
it's
you
clear,
could,
yeah.
I could go back and look at it. I put some language in there about public display, but not not seen through your window. But I have to look at because I thought about that too.
Well,
And
another-
I thought specifically about kids in the public space where it's.
Right. Well, like you wouldn't want to. Yeah, you wouldn't obviously wouldn't want to have people selling it in the public space
Yeah.
unlabeled. But that's another crux is the crux of the vaporizer.
Yeah,
You know,
is the other
because-
vape, because people
Yeah.
use
Because
that.
people have nicotine vapes, which are
Yeah.
perfectly,
Yeah.
Right.
so and there's no possible way to tell the difference, and they
Correct.
don't have any odor.
Yes. yes.
So those are the kind of cruxes. I mean, obviously, if you can't tell the difference between cannabis vape and a nicotine vape, and there's no discernible odor, then it's not gonna bother anybody other than it's someone vaping.
Well, and that was
Yeah.
the thing and that was one of the things for me too. Was like the odor and the the potential for secondhand intoxication,
Mm-hmm.
and so. But yeah,
Okay, so those are things we'll have to look at.
no law is perfect
No enforcement is perfect.
unless you write it.
Unless I read it. All right, so let's let's send it there.
Okay.
Yeah. Unless you have
any.
anything else you wanna.
No, I think that covers everything.
Perfect.
Yeah. So motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Cool.
Well done.
So when are we?